So in front of you are some of the potassium fertilizers that you can purchase on the market today. In fact, there's many more than what I'm going to share with you because people mix fertilizers together and you can buy liquid fertilizers at Home Depot or Lowe's at a garden set or at a garden center. So where do those fertilizers come from? Well, they come from potash or some form of potash, right? So regardless, here are some fertilizers that we can create. There's potassium chloride, 0060. This is potash. It's the most common potassium fertilizer. It's often called potash, or sometimes people will say muriate of potash. I just say potash, and most people just say potash. And if you hear potash, it should be referred to, or people should be referring to 0060, 60% K2O. This can be dissolved in water to make a fluid fertilizer. Now, how much of potash can you add to liquid? You can add about almost 350 grams per liter. You can't add any more because it won't dissolve in water at greater application rates in water itself. But that's still a lot of material to go into 1 liter of water. If you wanted to figure out per gallon, there's what, 3.78 liters per gallon. So you could do the math. It's a lot of potash. This material has something called a high salt index. It's salty. And so when we apply this, specifically with a seed, you should not apply any more than about 10 pounds per acre with a seed because it will burn the seed. It is salty. KCl. It looks a lot like, in terms of chemical formula, like table salt, sodium chloride, but this is potassium chloride. And it's salty, just like table salt. The second type of potassium fertilizer that I'm going to briefly describe is potassium sulfate. So the difference between this one and the first potassium fertilizer, potash, is the counter ion. In this case, it's sulfate. And if you were to buy this, the guarantee is 005017. So it contains 50% K2O, and it contains 17% sulfur. So this fertilizer is actually good if you need to apply potassium to a crop that's sensitive to chloride. And I hope we get a chance to talk about chloride later in the semester. It costs higher than potassium chloride, but if you need sulfur and you need potassium, you might just justify purchasing this product because it contains both. And then there's another fertilizer called Sopomag. It is a combination of potassium sulfate and magnesium sulfate. And it has a guarantee of 00, 22, 22, 11. Wow, what a mouthful, all right? Why does it have 5 numbers? It has 5 numbers because, first of all, it does not contain any nitrogen or phosphorus, but it does contain potassium, sulfur, and magnesium. I can tell you, and I bring this up for a reason because it's generally not used as a large-scale potassium fertilizer. It's used more in specialty crops, high-value crops, and horticulture. And it's important for me to tell you this because I know some of you are in horticulture, or some of you may be growing high-value crops. There's 2 others that I want to point out. There's potassium nitrate, also known as saltpeter. This has a guarantee of 13044. Why is it 13044? Well, look at the chemical composition. It contains potassium, but it also contains some nitrate. So it contains 13% nitrogen and 44% K2O. It's expensive for field use, and so it's usually used for horticultural, in the horticultural industry. And then there's potassium thiosulfate, and this contains some sulfur, so you can see that in the guarantee. It's liquid. It is well suited for foliar application, and it can also be used for fertigation. In fact, most of the fertilizers that contain potassium probably could be used for fertigation. You just need to make sure that they're pure, so they don't clog emitters. In your notes, there's a summary. I'm not expecting you to remember any of these, but I like sharing the pictures with you so you can see what these look like. So potassium chloride is here on the left-hand side. Depending on the color that's present, the impurities give it these different colors. Here's potassium sulfate, tends to be white. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish potassium sulfate from any of these other fertilizers that are also white. So you need to look at the bag when you purchase these things. Here is sulfomag, and it looks like rocks. That's interesting. These can be crushed, likely crushed finer. And here's potassium nitrate. Interesting. So that ends our discussion of conventional inorganic fertilizers.